So nearby Lucas, when's the last time you struggled with bad internet connection?
I mean, every time we've been recording the past couple of weeks,
Tell me about it. There are few first world problems as uniquely frustrating as bad internet. Of course, there are things in life that are worse, but there's just something maddening about the internet just not working when you really, really need it to, right?
I mean, I literally do 90+% of my work remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
And no internet connection's bad, but an unreliable one is enough to make me outright homicidal sometimes.
For example, when I'm streaming on Twitch, it's link below. And I'm there okay, my internet's cut out 3 times in the past 2 hours. Do I continue streaming? Do I not? How much worse is this going to get? And how much is it going to impact my current, actual work?
Yes. So, and if you are one of the people out there who suffers terribly with bad internet, the solution may come in the form of a pigeon, at least in some specific scenarios. So, Lucas, we talked about this once before on the podcast many, many years ago. So what are the details you recall about pigeon-based internet?
So the vague story that I remember is that I believe it was someone who worked for an internet company was pissed off at their internet speeds in office and went, it'd be bloody quicker to get a pigeon. I believe that was kind of the deal. Something
like that. So the actual, the origins of, and I have the name for it here, IP over avian carriers, the idea of transmitting data via pigeon instead of a traditional internet line or Wi-Fi or broadband or something, was initially suggested as a joke for the April Fool's Day request for comment by the Internet Engineering Task Force back in 1990. And their original pitch was very tongue-in-cheek, but did contain quite a number of pretty reasonable caveats, such as the fact that you'll be limited by the length of the pigeon's leg. And if you're wondering why the length of the pigeon's leg matter, their initial idea was to transmit data in the hexadecimal format and then feed that data into a computer at the point of receipt.
Okay, so
it was the 90s.
1990, isn't that pre-internet?
Basically, yeah. So the idea was suggested before the internet as we understand it today existed, but the idea has persisted to this day because some places just don't get a good internet connection. And have you ever seen the broadband map for America? Because it's fucking dire, mate.
I've not seen the map, but I have heard people...
So Lucas, everywhere that's not in blue can't get broadband.
Holy shit. Yeah. That's half the country.
Yeah, I think this is from 2021, so it might be slightly better now. But, folks at home, if you happen to live in one of the states where you can't get a good internet connection, why don't you just comment below letting us know the highest possible internet speeds you can get and then the price for that. Because it's not only that, the internet connection speeds are terrible in those locations, it's that very often there's either a monopoly or a duopoly. I think usually between Verizon and AT&T, and they just charge you out the nose. And usually there's things like data caps.
Yeah, because that's the thing I always got confused about is hearing American people on podcasts and videos and stuff say my internet's so bad. I'm like, okay, well just switch provider then.
Yeah.
And it's no, pretty much everywhere you get 1 or 2 options.
Yeah, and it's almost unheard of in the UK. For example, I'm with a company that provides 1 gig internet, which is pretty decent, and I need that for work.
Especially top end, yeah.
Yeah, during the pandemic when I was transferring hundreds of gig of data per day, every day, and then conversely you guys were downloading hundreds of gig of data to edit. We needed that, and I can't imagine, we could not have done our job in one of those places.
No, not with data caps alone, because
yeah, I think data caps alone would have stopped us from making videos.
Literally a couple of days worth of work, that would have been our monthly limit.
The idea of a data cap on your internet is so alien to me, because it just seems so stupid of why? I mean,
that's so 2005 in my head.
It feels like a problem that should be stopped. It's like paying for text messages. Why am I still paying for texts?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I not just get unlimited as part of my data package? Well, apparently it's still a thing, because in some places in the world, like in America, it's all you've got.
And yeah, the companies just, well, fuck you, where else are you going to go?
Exactly, and they've got no incentive to improve the internet connection in the area, which is why a pigeon might be the solution. And specifically, you will need a racing pigeon or a carrier pigeon, because regular pigeons aren't all that enthused about carrying tiny backpacks full of pornography. So you need to train the pigeon, so there is a cost there. But once you have that pigeon, and that pigeon is trained, you can get some pretty respectable transfer speeds.
See, I know that what happens is they'll strap like a little USB to the leg or something.
or a SD card.
I just have an actual image of a pigeon with a backpack full of tiny little porn magazines. Just like, you pull them out one by one.
Well, Lucas, you're British, right?
I am.
So should we now just talk for a moment about the British, like, young lad from the 90s rite of passage of finding porn in a bush?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Why is that a thing? Every lad I know who grew up around the same time as me has a distinct memory about finding porn in a bush. Why was there so much pornography in bushes?
I do not know. Like, was it that, you know, men in relationships were hiding their porn in forests?
Maybe. There's like porn goblins in the forest.
Like, I used to do a lot of amateur filmmaking with one of my friends in high school.
I was wondering where that was going.
And, you know, we made a lot of porn. We would do a lot of our filming in forest areas because, you know, generally it's easy to get away from people, quiet areas.
Lots of pornography.
Honestly, the amount of stashes we came across, it's unreal.
It's just a weird thing that happens in the UK. Like, does it happen in America? I guess in those places where good internet, it might still be a thing.
Do American forests have weird, like, porn goblins?
Yeah, do you have porn goblins in the United States? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, bring it back to pigeons. Yeah, you're not going to get, like, a stable, like, connection speed via pigeon or anything like that. But it is possible to transfer, like, hundreds of gig of data via pigeon exponentially faster than it would be via, like, you know, a coaxial or, like, dreaded, like, dial-up line. Some places in America still have dial-up. Do you know people still have AOL in America? Oh. They still have AOL dial-up. What's the worst internet speed you've ever had? Like, recently anyway, because I remember years ago, before I moved into the flat we're in now, I had 10 meg internet with 1 meg upload speed. And I once tried to upload a single Fiend video to YouTube, and the time it said was 14 hours. And I just went, fuck this. And I moved like a week later.
Well, that's exactly what happened when I joined Fiend is we were doing some like the Karl's Corner podcast at the time. And we also were doing some like gaming videos and stuff, just starting out that kind of thing. And I remember like when you mentioned like, oh yeah, you can come on, start editing videos. I was like, I'm gonna have to move then because I had like an experience of uploading like Zelda Breath of the Wild playthrough #1 with Karl and Lucas, and it was like 38 hours to upload.
Not to mention as well, during that time, it's most likely gonna crash. Yeah. Right? It's got to, because, you know, that's what happens when you've got slow, unreliable internet. Not to mention, like, you know, the increased costs to, like, you know, your electricity bill for leaving your PC on, uploading, like, data for all that time.
Yeah.
So in those scenarios, like, a pigeon would have been faster, and there are numerous examples of pigeons proving to be faster than, like, you know, just a traditional internet line available in that area. For example, a story from South Africa a few years ago when a guy was pissed off with the biggest internet provider in South Africa at the time, Telecom. He was so mad that what he did is he tried to transmit a file to a friend in an office nearby and then sent a pigeon. And the pigeon got there in about an hour and a half. Meanwhile, the upload that he'd sent got to about 4% after already crashing once.
Yeah, and that was like from one of their offices to the other one, I believe.
Yeah, which is, you know, a pretty standard thing in business of, oh, we need to upload something to like this server so someone else can download it. And in that, like, you know, by the time it got to 4% upload, the guy had already sent a pigeon, the person had got the thumb drive, plugged it in and got the data right away. And what makes this really funny is that Telecom got really mad, and rather than acknowledging, man, it kind of sucks that our internet is really, really bad at pigeon beat us, they accused the pigeon of being on steroids.
The thing is, that implies that the pigeon is on so much steroids that its performance increased 20-fold.
Well, that's the thing, like, even if the pigeon was on steroids, it's a fucking pigeon. I'd still expect, like, you know, the $1 billion of infrastructure that company is, like, you know, put into the ground to ensure we have an internet connection wouldn't be outperformed by pigeon with a thumb drive. And then, you know, a similar stunt was conducted in Australia, this time by some pranksters for the channel Hungry Beast, where it was to highlight how bad the internet is in Australia. And what they were trying to do is transmit some footage from the middle of nowhere to their officers. And they sent a pigeon and then a guy in a car and then tried to upload it via the ADSL line provided by Telstra, which is like their biggest broadband provider. And would you like to hazard a guess at what won?
I'm guessing the pigeon.
The pigeon won. I think it took about an hour and a half. The car took about 2 hours, and the internet upload failed twice. And at no point during the upload process did the estimated time ever fall below 4 hours, which means that it would have literally been quicker to drive all the way out there, drop off the thumb drive, and drive back. It would have been quicker to just drive and drop it off. And then there was another one, like, much closer to home in the rural UK, where there's similarly bad internet connection speeds, where it was like a BBC piece on it, where someone just filmed a video and they tried to upload it to YouTube and then sent a pigeon to the journalist. It's like, what's going to get here first? Is it going to upload to YouTube where I can view it and put it in my program, or will the pigeon get here first? The pigeon got there in an hour and the YouTube upload failed. Because of course it did. It just sums it up, doesn't it, of just the pigeon. And what annoys me about that is the person was uploading it via BT. And Lucas, what does BT stand for?
I believe it stands for British Telecom.
Yes, and who owns all of the lines for the internet in the UK?
I believe it would be British Telecom.
Yeah, so I have a massive hate boner for British Telecom, because if you get internet in the UK, generally, unless you've got a private provider who sets up their own line, you have to pay something called line rental, which is paid to BT because they set up the lines originally. And there are companies out there who can offer cheaper and faster internet than BT can to the same area. And I don't understand how they do that, because they still have to pay a line rental to BT. And I will never understand how somebody can undercut the provider. They own the lines, and they're renting them out to other people who can somehow offer you better speeds on their lines for less money while also still paying them. It makes no sense. How do they not have a complete and utter monopoly?
I really don't understand. Because you would imagine if one company is in charge of the entire country's network, they would have a monopoly.
And for Americans thinking, isn't that the same as what you have with your monopoly? Well, in the UK, it's slightly different, because there's a rule for the UK that every home within the area of the UK must be able to access the BBC. So for that reason, even if you live in the Outer Hebrides or John O'Groats or something like that, you must be able to access the BBC. So the government spent a bunch of money on telecommunications equipment all across the country that they then rent out to other private businesses, because they realise, a private business isn't going to want to provide television to the 5 people who live in bumfuck nowhere Outer Hebrides, but they're still British citizens. They should have access to the news and stuff like that. And BT is the same way, where the lines would put down by the government, but then private entities can rent or use them if they want. But then they can undercut the government, despite the fact the government should have no overheads.
And then, I'm pretty sure at this point, BT must be a privately owned company, not a government one, yeah.
But the lines were still initially put down by and I don't understand how the government put the lines down and then get undercut. It makes no sense. But just to end on, though, with regards to pigeons, there are some places where they prefer pigeon to Wi-Fi. Because you think Wi-Fi, in the age of Wi-Fi, surely that just negates the need for pigeon. But there's some companies, such as rafting companies and things like that, who will take pigeons with them when they go whitewater rafting or out into the sea or something like that, and when they're taking photos for you.
Yeah.
And they'll just put the USB drive onto a pigeon and it'll fly off, and it'll be back at the place where you go back in, and your photos are already there ready by the time you get back, thanks to pigeon.
And that's the thing, it's just casually knowing from looking what I can get for my Nintendo Switch, for example, an SD card for that can hold 4 terabytes.
Yeah.
It's that's tiny, and it's got such a massive amount of data on it, and a USB is probably even more.
You could easily fit that on it. And one of the benefits of pigeon-based internet is there's a couple of there's some downsides, obviously. My favourite one is packet loss. And the image they use to demonstrate packet loss when they describe it is just a pigeon that hit a window. And it's fuck's sake. I guess that does count. And then you have maybe a hawk or tacket or something like that. But one of the benefits is you can't hack a pigeon. You can't hack a pigeon.
You can try and get one out of the sky if you really.
You can, but that's things and think how fast racing pigeons go. It's they're a mile up in the air going 40 miles. You're never going to catch that bastard, are you? And it's true, you can't hack a pigeon.
Can you find its IP address?
What's the IP address on this pigeon? It's cool. It just goes, it's gone. But yeah, pigeons can be faster than the internet. And like, you know, to clarify that statement, because people are like, well, it's not faster, is it? It's like, well, technically it can be, because if you like take into account the amount of data a pigeon can move in that hour, you know, you put a couple, like, you know, 128 gig thumb drives on its back, you would get theoretical upload speeds of about 2 meg per second.
That's the thing that I was saying, like, you're talking terabytes nowadays.
Yeah. Like 2 meg per second is pretty deep. That's enough to stream Netflix.
Obviously, you can't stream something off of a pigeon, but like you could, you know, have an entire series of The Office pigeon flown to somebody to go watch.
Yeah, and that's the joke that I make in this. And the joke I make in the article is that a pigeon could fly episodes of The Office to you faster than you could buffer it on, like, you know, bad internet.
And it's funny because I for a second was like, oh my god, I can't believe I said The Office as well, but there's just Jim's face.
Yeah, I made the joke of, like, I just, like, pixelated the fuck out of Jim's face and said, yeah, no one wants to watch The Office where it just looks like Jim is on, like, a true crime. Oh god, not so funny. A true crime show.
I like how you've done that when I could have just edited that picture from the article into the background.
Could have done, but that's not as funny. But anyway, yeah, go pigeons. So Nearby Lucas, as mentioned, like, we rely on the internet for our jobs, but this isn't the only job myself and you have, is it? We have several other channels that we help run behind the scenes. Like, I, for example, currently help host on Top 10s, Biographics and Geographics. Not sure when this goes up, but check out the links for that below. But also, I help run Wiki Weekends with Lucas.
You do indeed. And yeah, we've got fingers in many pies, as the saying goes. But yeah, just Wiki Weekends, it was successful on Fat Fiend, but we figured have its own channel, get, you know, all of our subscribers are there for one specific form of content that way, and there's a lot of like behind the boring scene stuff that just we don't need to get into. But
it's we decided that Wiki Weekends was a good idea. It's better to have a good idea stand on its own than like attach it to Fact Fiend and dilute the idea of the content that we produce.
Yeah, exactly. Like, some people will comment that they only ever watch Fat Fiend videos, vice versa, Wiki Weekends, splitting up our subscriber base a bit, and it's just, yeah, we thought it was a good enough idea to make its own channel, and people can continue and go and enjoy both, you know, Karl hosting Wiki Weekends, I was about to say Wiki Weekdays, Karl hosting Wiki Weekends videos, myself hosting Wiki Weekends videos, and we both host a Wiki Weekdays podcast every Wednesday as well.
Which you can also find on podcast services, and if it helps like sweeten the pot for people, we did recently do an episode on Warhammer.
God damn it, Karl.
So go check that out if you want to, but otherwise, like, yeah. So what's the most annoyed you've been with the internet? Because I get so pissed off sometimes when I'm trying to upload stuff. Because, like, you know, I'm paying for good internet. Like, the place that I live has really thick concrete walls. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like, I'll be on my Xbox, like, playing Call of Duty or something in the other room, and my connection will be like, shit. I'm like, I'm paying for 1 gig internet, and I go check my download speed. It's like, oh, you're getting like 10 meg. I'm like, so I remember once just getting the router and, like, you know, nudging it, like, trying to drag the router ever so much closer to the wall without unplugging it from my PC.
I do remember not long ago, bear in mind my PlayStation 5 is 10 foot away from my router.
Yeah.
And is normally wired in. And I had this, I think it was when I was downloading Resident Evil 4 Remake. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the exact game, but I think it was that. And it came up and it was like, oh, it's going to take like 18 hours to download.
No, like, fuck it is.
It's like, but I'm on gig internet like you are. And it's like, why is it? And I went to like fiddle around with the thing. The wire had come out. For some reason, the wireless was going at like a mega second. Plug in the wire. Oh, it'll be 12 minutes, don't worry.
Is there anything more annoying than what the PS4 does, where the PS4, if you plug a wire into the back and if it's on wireless, doesn't automatically switch over to being on wired?
PlayStation 5 doesn't either.
PlayStation 5 doesn't either, okay, so yeah. But Xbox does, and so does the Switch. But like, I remember once when I was like streaming some Mortal Kombat, and I was like, why is my internet connection? I've got like it plugged in. I've got 1 gig internet, it still says on Wi-Fi, and I think someone in my chat, because I was streaming it, just said, oh, PlayStation doesn't detect it automatically, you have to put it on manually. Like, why the fuck is that a thing?
Yeah, because I had another occasion where I think like Jenna was there going like, why is my internet like, why is Netflix barely streaming on the PlayStation? And then I would like check the settings and it was set to wireless, and I was like, it has the option wired right there. It's like, why would you not default to that?
Why would you not default to that? Damn it. But cheers everybody, have a good day.